Hi guys, happy Monday. So today we're going to be talking about your options for your simple harmonic motion assessment. So again, this is a little bit different than our traditional tests that we have in class. So you will have options to choose how you would like to demonstrate your understanding of the main topics in this unit. So you're going to select one activity out of the following 6. Each activity will be scored out of 100 points. So if the rubric, let's say, is out of 20 points, that will be scaled to a grade of 100, or out of 100, in Genesis. Okay, so each activity will be scored out of a 100% value and placed in Genesis as a test grade. This assessment is going to take a little bit of time, okay, because it involves you being creative. It's going to involve some planning. So because of that, it's going to be due on May 8th during your class period. Okay, so this might not be the only thing you have to do this week before May 8th. You'll most likely have another assignment posted on Thursday, minimally, depending on our check-ins. So I suggest that you use every day to kind of work towards completing this. Okay, it's going to take more time than a typical test, but it's going to allow you to be creative and choose the way you want to show your understanding. So here are our options. Okay, I'm going to go through them a little bit briefly. So our first option is to create a lesson plan, teach and record a lesson on one of the underlined topics. So you can either choose to talk about Hooke's law, period, and frequency of a pendulum, or period and frequency of a spring mass system. Your actual video recording of your lesson should be a minimum of 15 minutes long. Okay, so there are 3 materials that are hyperlinked here to help you plan this, execute it, and determine how you'll be graded. So there's a checklist that kind of gives you an idea of what should be in a lesson. There's a planning template to help you plan out your lesson. And then there's a rubric that explains how you will be assessed. So we're going to start out with a checklist. So you're actually going to visit this last before you present your, or submit rather, before you submit your project to Genesis, or to Google Classroom. So you have an introduction activity, meaning a do now, a hook, okay, which based on our class, right, has always been either a YouTube video or a do now question to get people thinking, or sometimes it's a PhET simulation in which we play around with and I ask you to answer a question based on, right? So you want some introduction activity, okay, and then an explanation of why that introduction activity is relevant to what you're going to talk about, okay? Then, next portion of the lesson should be an explanation of the topic that you chose to teach a lesson on. So, explaining what is Hooke's law? How do we model Hooke's law using an equation? What is elasticity? What's a spring constant? What's a restoring force, right? Then, using that equation, you're going to do a couple of examples. So, in the videos, since we've left school, right, I usually put in about 2 examples to keep the videos on the shorter side. In an actual class, right, I usually do 3+ examples. Depending on the length of your examples, which you're creating, right, it depends kind of on the exact number. But your video should be 15 minutes long. Okay, I suggest that you plan for about 2 examples, but again, open to interpretation. As long as you cover the information and you explain how to calculate it, then you're okay. Following the videos, right, you're going to want a way for students to understand or determine that they know and can apply what they just watched to actually solving and understanding how the objects move and why they move. So you're going to need a practice activity. Okay, so that activity can be structured for groups of students or individual students, up to you. It should be at least 5 questions, and you want to include an answer key. Okay, so it could be a Kahoot, it could be a Google form, it could be a Google Doc with 5 questions on it. Okay, it's up to you how you want to assess people's understanding, but you need to create some kind of post activity to make sure that students know what's going on. Okay, delivery of material. So before you begin your recording, you have some way to actually transcribe over the computer the material that you're going to teach. So you use Google Slides, Google Docs, okay, something, some platform in order to express your information in a clear, logical way. You also need to make sure that your video presentation is easy to follow so that people can hear you. Okay, it's in a logical order. And last portion is your lesson plan. So you need to actually fill this out. I suggest you do this before you begin planning your lesson in Google Slides, Google Docs, Jamboard. So I'll link under resources a couple of things that you guys could use. I suggest that you plan it out first. Okay, so this is a shortened version of a lesson plan that I would make. So your intro activity. What are you going to do? Show a YouTube video. Okay, explain the YouTube video. Extensive explanation. What's Hooke's law? What's restoring force? What's spring constant? Etc. The practice activity. How are you going to assess, or how will you allow students to self-assess whether they understand what's going on? And then materials technology. What do you need to use in order to accomplish your goal of teaching that specific topic? And then last thing is your rubric. So how you'll be graded. So you'll receive 10 points if it's within a reasonable time frame, 15 to 20 minutes, if we can hear you. Eye contact with the webcam. Okay, so your actual presentation is worth 10 points. The lesson materials, the materials that you create and then present, right? So the Google Slides presentation, if you use Google Slides, okay? That can also be Google Docs, etc. So your actual presentation of the lesson and then your video submission is worth 20 points. The do now, so your hook, your do now, your introduction, and your explanation of that is worth 5 each. So that's a total of 10 points. Your explanation of the topic and your examples are worth 30 out of the 100 points. Your follow-up activity and the answer key for it is worth 20 points. And then your lesson plan template completion is worth 10 points for a total of 100 points. Okay, so that's your first option. Your second option is to communicate your results. So analyze the results from the Hooke's Law lab in a formal lab report. Okay, so the template that we're using for the formal lab report is very similar, obviously, to the egg drop lab report, except it's a different lab. And our tables and graphs are going to look a little bit different. So the rubric adjusts for that. So formal lab report, right? You're going to write an introduction paragraph. You need this information as your title, your heading rather. Your name, the date, the period, and the partners you worked with, if you worked with any partners on the Hooke's Law lab, right? Which was the lab in which we looked at the elasticity of an elastic band and a spring mass system, and we compared it, right? We came up with that prediction as to whether the elastic band system would follow Hooke's Law. Okay, so you're going to have your heading, the title. You're going to write an introduction paragraph using important key terms like Hooke's Law, restoring force. Okay, So information that you would need to know in order to do that lab. You're going to write up your procedure, okay, for parts 1 and part 2. You're going to include your data, so both graphs, both data tables, okay, goes under the section of data. Make sure that they're labeled, right? Analysis questions. So you're going to copy and paste those analysis questions underneath the analysis section, and then write a conclusion paragraph explaining, was your hypothesis correct? Did the elastic band follow Hooke's law? How do you know? What data do you have to support that? Okay? Were there any errors that could have affected the accuracy of your lab? Okay? If you could repeat this lab, what would you do differently? Right, so that conclusion is in paragraph form. And following the format and guidelines is the rubric, how you will be graded out of 100-point scale. Okay, next option, option 3. Evaluate. So, you have a textbook at home. In your textbook, there is a segment on Hooke's law and simple harmonic motion. I will also post, in case you didn't bring your textbook home and leave it there, like we said to in September, I will also post resources for you to check out if you don't have access to your textbook. So you're going to write a textbook entry to replace the simple harmonic motion unit. It should be a minimum of 5 pages. Please consider your audience, right? You want this to be interesting to someone your age reading it. So it should explain how to calculate the information. It should explain the formulas, but you want images, right? You want pictures, images, examples that are interesting. Please consider your audience. Okay, and that rubric here is also attached. If you choose that option, okay, you can go through that individually. So that's the only option that you would not have to record a video for. Submit, whether you use Google Slides or Google Docs to create that e-textbook, you would submit that to Classroom. And if you use any resources, you must cite them using MLA citing, which I know from your English teachers that you all know how to do that. So if you're having issues, you can always contact me. Option 4 would be to create your own test of Hooke's law. Okay, so pretend that you are creating the test. The test should include a minimum of 15 questions. Be sure to include an answer key. Okay, and there's also a rubric attached there. So you want to use your old test as a guide. Okay, it could be a Google form if you'd like, or it could be doc, doesn't matter. Option 4 is to create a review game to help students review for the final in an engaging yet educational way. Okay, again, consider your audience, right? You guys will be playing this game. Your game must include at least 15 questions or playable components. Okay, there's also a rubric attached there. The type of game is up to you. Okay, it shouldn't be Treasure Island because we already have played that for this unit. It can be something like Jeopardy, Kahoot. The actual format is up to you. I want you to be creative. So create a game that you would want to play in our class concerning this unit to help you review for the final exam. Okay. You obviously should have the answers in the game. It should be playable so that kids can play it immediately, automatically. It can be played individually or in teams. Up to you. Your last option is to create a song, rap, or children's book. Okay, so this last option, you will be explaining the concepts. Okay, the concepts of vibrations, simple harmonic motion, and elastic potential energy. So you must explain those concepts in either a song, rap, or children's book. Okay, you will create the artifact, whether it's a song, rap, children's book, and you will record your performance. Only I will see it. Okay, and there's a rubric attached for that as well. So once you've weighed your options, you're going to fill out the Google form in Classroom. Let me know which option you choose. Okay, once I've determined what option you've chosen, I will then communicate with you individually to make sure that you're on the right track and that we understand what's going on. Okay, I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.